Hey Rip, so at long last the long delayed, long promised video with some information about my lit project. So I started this project in 2006, shortly after I finished my master's. I turned my attention, and I had also finished my Japanese level 1 proficiency, so I decided to turn my attention to literature, and it's been there ever since, pretty much. The order is chronological in the sense that the first one that I did was this one, just Shakespeare, and then just down through the order, through the sequence, you can see, year by year, the ones that I was focused on that year. And the guiding principle for this is sort of the opposite that you would find in a PhD, which is to narrow the focus as much as possible to a particular writer, usually an obscure writer, because the more famous ones have been written to death. Rather than that approach, I've gone the opposite direction, and just eclecticism is the whole idea of this thing. So I try to read and learn about, and I guess I call it documenting my aesthetic responses and judgments to the language that I found in each work by doing this project. So the Shakespeare one is kind of cool. It starts off with the plays, the comedies, the tragedies, and the histories, and I have this best of the best, rest of the best, but the best of the best is the main focus. And I think I've showed you this particular one before, but I'll do it again. So each of these works, each of these plays, I read actually in 2003 originally, and every single one of these passages, one of these little lines, links to a great speech or a great witty passage of dialogue, or something really memorable and rich that I thought was sort of represented the best of that play. So if you click on each one of these, you can find the full quote. And it goes through all of the plays. There's a few that I didn't include, but the history plays are all the way through here, and then the comedies, all the way up through these Twelfth Night, and then the tragedies, beginning with, I'm not sure if Romeo and Juliet is considered one of his tragedies, but it's obviously a sad ending, so I kind of put it in there. And as was Hamlet, it's also sort of a historical, I think, but and then going into the really canonical tragedies, Othello, King Lear, Macbeth, all these different plays, right? Now, this was when I was first beginning to sort of evolve my approach, and I took a different approach as time went on, rather than putting the individual. I did this same approach of like going through a work and putting all like abbreviations of the great passages, in form of words, like phrases that go through the chronology of the work. I did that in some other things as well, like for example this Henry James novel is quite detailed in the things that I did. So each of these books that you go through, let's give me a little bit of, there it is. Okay. Each of these books I've kind of put like it's not only a synopsis, but in some cases it's kind of like a synopsis. It's both really memorable bits of language and also, just a chronology of the actual narrative. But you click on any one of these and it'll take you to the passage, the particular location of that in the work. And one of the basic features of the way I do this is the color coding. particularly the pink. The pink passages are kind of the richest passages. And so one of the things that I think is appealing about this lit project and could make it useful even to people who've never read the work, I think the main enjoyment and utility of it is reconstituting a novel or a long poem or something in your memory, right? You've read it once already, and then you can kind of go around and click around and do it in a non-chronological way and experience it like as in like moments. It's almost like a YouTube kind of medley of the best moments in a particular movie, let's say. You can jump around and you can remember what happened in that point in the narrative by reading the work. But what's also very important about these passages is that quite apart from the story that they're a part of, as language, as like nuggets or gems of language, they stand alone. That's one of the main guiding principles as well for the ones that I color code with the pink, right? And another sort of refinement that I added a bit into the project, probably 3 or 4 years into the project, was numbering and counting those particular rich passages. So not all of the pink passages are good enough or memorable enough to me or gave me enough, excitement and moved me or I found interesting enough or memorable or beautiful enough to actually merit one of these numbered codings. So these hyperlinks are the very best of the pink. And you can kind of get a sense of how much I liked a work based on the number of links that it has, right? And again, these are a slightly more efficient way of doing what I was doing in the earlier works, which was the actual passages, the quotes in sequence, right? Instead of doing it that way, I just decided to put a number to it, and then it would take you to that particular passage. I kind of look at this as a combination of things. It's part sort of archaeology, right? Like I'm going back into these, now somewhat obscure works. Some of them are not obscure, obviously. Thomas Hardy and Shakespeare and Henry James and William Wordsworth and people like that, Mark Twain, are well enough known. But I don't only look at the most famous work. I try to be complete and put all of that particular writer's works in the section, right? And as an example of that, let's take the poems. Now the poems, my approach to the poems is by using a star rating. I go through all of the poems in that writer's collected works, and I give them a star rating from 0 stars to 4 stars. And so it's very easy to see the very best ones by going to the 4 stars. But I also like to use the star ratings as a way to highlight the slightly less famous but equally rich, and not equally, but almost as rich and almost as beautiful as the 4-star ones, right? And I've done this with quite a few of these artists, like for example, Wallace Stevens is a very famous modernist poet, and I went through every one of his poems and gave them a star rating, and each one you can click on and obviously you can go to and read the actual poem. And early on I hadn't quite come up with that refinement, so it was just sort of like the pink stuff, like John Keats poems. are not given the star ratings so much, but they're just, you just have the pink passages, right? And other poets that I did this with were when I started with Shakespeare, I became really interested in classical antiquity because so much of his work and so much of the Renaissance writers came from rediscovering the ancient Greek and Roman works that had been sort of forgotten during the Dark Ages and medieval times. And so I began to make that sort of another strand of the project, was to try to read as many of these classic ancient works of Greece and Rome that I could, originally in Latin, originally in ancient Greek, and these are of course English translations. But Horace is an example. He's a great Roman poet that I really enjoyed. Let's see. Virgil is another one. Lucretius is another one of these that I liked as so much that I actually ended up doing this synopsis kind of thing of like I did with the Henry James work. Walt Whitman is another poet that I've done that's gets the full, complete treatment of star ratings for each of his works. And not only do I have all of his poems, but I have his Specimen Days, which was his journal that he wrote during the Civil War. And I haven't star rated those, but they are color-coded with pink. And as you can see, some of these don't merit any pink passages, but I still include it because I want to include as much as possible the entire context. Let's see. Okay, so Walt Whitman was one of those. Marcel Proust was another one that I did. I've read 4 of the 7 volumes of this classic work of his, In Search of Lost Time. I haven't read all 7 of them yet, and I've only put up the first volume, but I've done the synopsis with that as well. So you can go through, the entire narrative and find the different points in the narrative that were sort of memorable in that part of the book. And you can click and it'll take you to it, right? Let's see what else I can focus on. And William Butler Yeats is another poet that I've done that with, where you can go through all of his works, and there's a star rating for those, all those poems of his. And let's see. There's just so much of it. It's hard to sort of give a brief kind of description of it, but John Milton, his entire works. This is what I get this, it's like a marathon, really. I like a marathon mentality where I want to get all of it. I want to put all of it on there, and I want to go through each of them and close read, not just one time, but 2 times or 3 times the work, and really sift and focus on and sort of mark the best passages. So I've got, all of his Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, and all the other works of his. Let's see what else here. I got the Bible on here. I haven't finished by a long shot that yet, but I have done the entire Old Testament, and each book of the Bible has the same system of color coding the passages that are especially rich and meaningful and numbering them. I also started doing something with to to make it a little bit more even accessible by really doing the